Deadline magazine. Anthony D'Alessandro now says today on March 31st that Snow White, poisoned by controversy at the box office, won't have a happy ending with a $115 million loss.
You sure about that?
Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us every Sunday and Wednesday afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern right here for the live show. So is this article the real deal? Is it the real McCoy? Is there legitimacy to this? Well, I can answer this two ways. Anthony D'Alessandro gets some amazing inside information, and it's very rare that he produces an article like this with so much detail as to information that he's gleaned on a particular production. I wish that he was able to do this with nearly every film out there because he really does have some good contacts. Now, it makes it a bit of an unfair comparison to talk about some of the stuff here in this article and then compare it to a lot of other movies or nearly any other movie that he hasn't done a write-up quite like this about because we just don't have comparable information. But Anthony D'Alessandro in this article claiming that a $115 million loss for Snow White is both right and wrong. Disney's Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot starring Snow White is headed to an estimated loss of $115 million. After all global home entertainment, TV, and Disney Plus ancillaries, according to distribution sources Monday. I wonder if those distribution sources would be at Disney themselves. The loss, which was expected, is based on a final worldwide box office of $225 million. And to remind folks, after a terrible opening weekend and a dumpster fire second weekend, this is where Snow White stands as of the close of business on Sunday, March 30th. $142 million worldwide. Now, I suggested that I thought Snow White would leg out to somewhere a little north of the Marvels, which closed just shy of $200 million. But it's not going to get anywhere close to something like Captain Falcon. So with Deadline's estimate of $225 million as a final tally, that could be a little bit high, unfortunately, but it also might be right on the money. We'll have to see how it goes in the next few weeks. Broken down, says D'Alessandro at Deadline, the global cume is based on a possible $100 million take domestically. Now, this is what Anthony is assuming is going to be Snow White's entire North American box office run. It's currently in the $60 million range, so obviously he doesn't think it's got really anything left in the tank, just as we thought. I kind of have to agree with him, and that's under the $115 million gross of 2019's Dumbo. Now, again, 2019 Dumbo, $115 million. If you put the same number of butts and seats today in 2025 as were there in 2019, and then charged them today's 2025 ticket prices, that $115 million gross would probably be closer to 140 to maybe even 150 million. We have seen some radical inflation in ticket prices since pre-COVID, somewhere around 40% in some cases. Snow White, per our forecasts at Deadline Magazine, will clear $295 million in revenues. Now, that's not box office, that's revenues. That's net revenue back to Disney in this case. What are they actually going to get after retailers take their cut on the various things that Deadline is going to go into? They estimate $101 million in global film rentals. Now, full stop right there. What have we been talking about? We use a lot of the same metric data that Deadline uses to calculate box office, and Deadline certainly knows what they're talking about. Deadline is saying that their estimation puts Snow White at a final global box office haul of $225 million, with only $101 million of that making its way back to Disney distribution. The reason for that is because of the slightly outsized performance in the international markets. Right now, internationally, Snow White is about 10 million ahead of what has happened in North America. And as we've been reminding people for years, international receipts take a much bigger haircut than they do here in North America. You have more layers of international taxation, foreign currency exchange drag, and yes, usually third-party international distributors and local regulations and laws that say theaters have to take so much. So all of that gets factored in, and this is why, on average, with China excluded, of course, that most studios like Disney will take back somewhere around the low 40% range of international box office, where here domestically, they take somewhere for big movies like this, somewhere in the low to mid 50s. Deadline also estimates here, again, based on their distribution sources, which you have to assume is probably Disney in this case, $62 million in worldwide home entertainment. Let's talk about that one for a minute. What is that? Worldwide home entertainment in this case is going to be physical media sales, Blu-rays, 4Ks, and whatnot of the Snow White film. Also, and a bigger portion of that, especially in this day and age, is going to be PVOD, or Premium Video on Demand. When you go to iTunes or when you go to Amazon Prime, for example, or whatever source that you use, like Movies Anywhere, to buy or rent a new home release of a film like this before it hits streaming a few weeks later. So what Deadline is saying is they believe that Disney will net back after Amazon and iTunes and everybody else takes their, say, 30% commission on being the retailer for this, maybe 40%, that Disney's going to net back $62 million in sales. That's probably somewhere close to $100 million in retail sales and rentals for Snow White by that estimation. To be honest with you, that seems a little high to me for a movie that's going to finish up at around $200 million globally. It also seems a little high to me when you consider that just 2-3 weeks after this movie is released on PVOD, maybe a month later, it's going to be available on Disney Plus, which brings us to another problem in this calculation. Disney Plus is available in nearly every country on Earth. It's got roughly 140 million subscribers between the domestic market here in North America and internationally. That's a lot of eyeballs that could otherwise just sit and wait a few extra weeks, not spend any extra money to buy a release of this on PVOD, and just have it land on Disney Plus, because the primary audience that would want to buy it are going to be able to watch it with no extra costs on Disney Plus. That's the kids just a few weeks later. Are people really going to spend nearly $100 million buying copies of this? It might happen, but it might not. The funniest part of this is that Deadline is estimating, again, from their distribution sources, Disney or otherwise, that Rachel Zegler's Snow White merchandise is only going to bring in $2 million for the Walt Disney Company. Repeat, only $2 million. That is laughably atrocious. This is a major Disney princess. This is the Disney princess that launched this brand. Snow White and Disney Princess toys are still some of the biggest sellers out there. Those dolls are made by Mattel, and Mattel makes a lot of money with these. So according to this didn't move the needle at all for merchandise sales for Snow White. In fact, obviously, it was a net negative. But $2 million for Disney back on merchandising when this is a type of film that absolutely depends, this sort of intellectual property, the lifeblood of it is merchandising. And Disney is making next to nothing on it. It goes to prove once again that absolutely nobody was interested in this live-action remake, including Disney's core audience of young girls that would want to go see Snow White. Then comes the big whopper. And let's talk about this one. $130 million is part of this estimated nearly $300 million in total revenues for Snow White. $130 million in streaming and TV revenues. Ladies and gentlemen, where is this Snow White going to go for streaming and television? That's right. It's going to go to Disney. It's going to go to Disney Plus, and that is where it's going to stay. So the $130 million of estimated long-range streaming revenue for this film is all going to be paid for with Disney's own money. Let me put it another way. Let's say over here I have $40, and over here I have nothing. And both hands are accounts that are owned by the Walt Disney Company. What the Walt Disney Company is doing is saying, hey, we're going to have Disney Plus pay Disney Snow White a licensing fee to put it on streaming. The problem is I still have only $40. Now, let me show you how it works at other studios like Sony, for example, or even hybrid models at studios like Universal. Universal and Sony have $40. And then Netflix comes in with $20 to buy the streaming rights. Now, Sony and Universal have $60. Yes, they've actually made money in this case. So Snow White, which is owned by Disney, getting $130 million of streaming revenue from Disney is what we're saying here. So yes, while that may be true, the reality is that that's not actual new money for Disney. That's not a positive cash flow. It's just moving a $20 bill from one ledger balance to another ledger balance inside the same house of mouse. Oh, but Valiant, Disney says that Disney Plus is now profitable. They're making money over there. Doesn't matter that they were nearly $10 billion in the hole leading up to the moment 5 years later that they finally showed a quarterly profit. No, everything is fine. Well, no, even throwing out the massive amounts of red ink, buckets of red ink that direct-to-consumer has bled in the last 5 years, it's exactly that. It's direct-to-consumer. It's not just Disney Plus. See, if Disney Plus was actually churning out some good profits, then why wouldn't Disney show that on their financial reports? They don't. They combine in the entertainment division for streaming both Disney Plus and Hulu. And Hulu is widely regarded as being profitable for a number of years. It's an advertising juggernaut for streaming. Just ask some of the experts in that industry. So in other words, when we see very small profits even for direct-to-consumer with Disney on their quarterly earnings calls, well, for all we know, that's Hulu turning a profit of $500 million and Disney Plus losing $500 million to get to where they are now at roughly break even. We don't know because Disney doesn't tell us. Ask yourself why that is. It's because Disney Plus likely continues to just swipe the credit card over and over to pay for constant flops like Captain Falcon, like Snow White, like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, like Lightyear, like Strange World, like Wish, and we could go on and on for an hour. Now comes some serious fire and confirmation here. Counter all of this with a $410 million feature expense, comprised of a $270 million net production price tag and a $111 million global prints and ads campaign with another $29 million in residuals and other expenses. Now, that $270 million figure is one that has been reported a number of times, and I wonder if this case might just be a bit of coincidence because D'Alessandro very carefully chose the phrasing as net production expenses. Now, the $270 to $280 million figure that was reported by Disney with the production entity that was covered by our friend in Forbes magazine, Caroline Reed, that was a gross spend. That was before you netted out film tax credits, which brought it down to closer to $220 million. But as we continue to remind folks, that was only what was done through the end of December of 2023. Almost 15 months ago now. So is this estimation of a net $270 million what the final costs are bearing out to be with figures that they have not reported yet in the UK, or are they still going to be higher? I'd be a little surprised if the net expense was only another $50 million over those last 15 to 16 months since the last filing. There was a lot of rework being done in that last 15 months. It is possible, but we'll just have to wait and see because the ultimate reality check will be those continued financial filings in the UK. Calculating a loss of $115 million, including a lot of things that either have not happened yet or Disney basically shifting dollar bills from the right to the left pocket. Let's break this backwards and see what this really is. $115 million. We have no actual sales yet of this film in the home media market. That $62 million may or may not materialize anywhere close to that. For all we know, it might be $100 million. It could also be $30 million. It just hasn't happened yet. And again, that's post-theatrical. Then you've got the $130 million that Disney is going to pay itself. Add that right back into the $115 million because that's Disney just shifting the loss to another account. That puts us up at around $245 million in losses right there. Then you throw in the $60 million that hasn't happened yet with home video sales, and that puts you, guess what, right at about $300 million, a little over $300 million. So guess what, kids? We were right on the nose. Deadline actually agrees with our assessment. It's just that they're throwing in some other things that with typical productions, we have no real way of knowing unless somebody like D'Alessandro comes out and reports it based on sources that he has contact with. And that's also assuming the box office continues to leg out to the $225 million and not closer to $200. It also assumes that the net $270 million production costs actually come in accurately once all financial reportings have been made. For all we know, Disney is sitting on a financial report right now that they haven't filed yet, but that may still not be the last report. And the person who was familiar with it said, yeah, as of right now, this is where we are at a net of 270. There may still be 10 or 20 million more. We just don't know yet. But either way, the real loss here we're looking at with Disney is going to be pushing towards $300 million, just as we thought. Thanks, Deadline. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.